Hello and welcome to that bass and creativity lesson. My name is Olivier Babaz from Montreal. Today I'd like to talk about spicing up a little bit the harmony. So what we're going to do is take very common two chords progressions and see how we can change a little bit of the chord structure in order to make it a little bit more sophisticated. So we already talked about reharmonization through the bass notes. So today we're going to focus a little bit more on the upper and medium register of the chord structure. It's something that's very useful to work with a piano or with a guitar in order to take consciousness of how the harmony can be manipulated in order to bring certain subtleties. So let's dive in with our first example. We're in C major and we're going to have a 4 to 5 and back to 4 and 5 movement. So we're going to have F major 7 going to G7, F major 7 going to G7. That's the basic harmony that we're going to change. So first, let's hear how it sounds in its very natural state. 1, 2, 3. Very common chord progression. We can find that in a lot of tunes. Now, what's happening there is that we're balancing between two chords belonging to C major. What we can do is modify one of them in order to bring another color. So what we're going to do is keep the F major 7 and move, instead of G7, going to another G major 7. So we have F major 7 going to G major 7. And the note that will make the difference is the 7th of the G major. So it's a major 7. So if you're playing piano, that 7th, if you put it on top of your voicing, you'll really hear strongly the difference. So let's hear how it sounds. Do balancing, but this time by changing F to G7 to F to G major 7. So as we're doing for all those lessons based on creativity, all those examples with piano can be applied to bass only. It's just a little less evident. So when you want to have that kind of harmony sounding with the bass in solo, for example, try to use more and more pattern and intervallic shapes. So I'm going to show you how I do it, and it's just to give you a few ideas. So same thing, but just keeping a drone note on top and trying to play that kind of harmonic movement. Of course, with the piano it's a lot more evident, but on the bass you can always try to build shapes in order to underline those change of harmony. Next example, same kind of chord movement. This time we're going to move from the 5 to the 4. Instead of 4 to 5, we're going to move from 5 to 4. So we start from, let's take an example of A7 sus4. So we have a A7 here, which should naturally go down to G major 7 with its sharp 4. But what we're going to do is now moved from A7 sus4 to G7 sus4. And if you want to increase that change, you can keep the same voicing and just move it parallelly. We have a full lesson about parallel modulation in another previous episode. So once again, A7 sus4 going to G7 sus4 instead of G major 7. So same thing as we did with the intervallic playing. If you want to focus more on the bass, keep a few droning notes that work for both chords and try to look for pattern and intervallic shapes that will underline that kind of harmonic change. So if I'm keeping, for example, A and D on top, here we go. Let's take another example. Very common. Generally, when we're on a major chord, we can easily go down to its minor relative. So let's take the example in B flat major. So we have B flat major going to G minor. That's the natural harmony. What we could do is just change that G minor 7 to a G7, and we could even add a sharp 11 to it to give it more flavor. So let's see how it sounds. So B flat major 7 going to G7 sharp 11. That really adds up a lot of great stuff in the harmony. Once again, be careful with that kind of movement. So let's take a final example, this time not with only 2 chords, but with 4 chords. So our basic chord progression would be E flat minor, 7, going to B flat bass D, going to E flat minor bass C sharp, or more D flat, and finally going to A flat bass C. Once again, our skeleton very common progression with the descending bass line. What we're going to do here is to play E flat minor, as we did for the first chord. Then we're going to play D minor instead of B flat bass D. So what we'll do is kind of move exactly the same voicing a whole half step down. Then back to E flat minor bass D flat, and then to finish up we're going to finish with C minor, and you'll see how it really changes the flavor. So first I'll do the original chord progression, and then I'll play the modified one. 1, 2, 3, and 2. So that's about it for today. So things to remember: start from existing and quite classic chord progression, and on the contrary that what we did in previous lesson, keep the bass movements, but this time try to change and modify the inner structure of the chord. So if you're changing one note in the following chord, if you want to increase that change, you put that note high in the register of your playing, being it on piano, on guitar, or even on bass. And if you want to be more discrete, play that changing note in the middle of your voicing. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson, and I'll see you again for the next Bass and Creativity episode. Bye bye!